Arya Satya will complete the fourth noble truth and go further. So you have seen already suffering or dukkha. We have seen the second noble truth, dukkha, samudaya, and a very important concept, pratik samutpad, comes out from it. Third is also equally important. It talks about dukh, nirodh. This is like nirvana. And now we are learning what is the path whereby we can attain nirvana, dukh, nirodh, marg. And this is like eightfold path, Ashtangik marg. In some way, this path is nothing but a life of reason. It is a life of reflection, contemplation, a life of investigation, scientific temper, critical thinking. And thereby we get to know the basic truth, which is contained in these four noble truths. So you have seen these 8 components can be further grouped as pragya, sheel, samadhi. Basically, eightfold path is suggesting Madhyama Pratipat. During Aristotle also had told you that middle path is more like non-alignment. Middle path is not exclusive, but it is more like trying to assimilate a life of convergence, where we don't take anything for granted. So there may be certain bodily needs, but that is not all about life. So extremes of overindulgence, extreme of self-mortification, asceticism shall be avoided, and we should go for an integration, a life of balance, a life of assimilation. It is also like a synthesis, and that is how later it will become dialectical as well. Not having your view will be akin to Shunya, according to Nagarjuna. So Madhyama Pratipat will become Madhyamik Karika of Nagarjuna also. So that's middle path, eightfold path is nothing but a life of constant striving. It is a life of perseverance, patience, relentlessness, not to give up. So we will start with the basics. तो जैसे आपको मालूम है, it is like samyak या samyag दोनों ही चलता है. दृष्टि, सम्यक संकल्प, सम्यक वाक, सम्यक कर्मांत, सम्यक आजीव, सम्यक व्यायाम, सम्यक smriti, and samyak samadhi. So we have to write these 8 ones. Pragya, Sheel, Samadhi. Okay. So we'll complete this part first, and then we'll go to the remaining ones. तो हेडिंग बनाइए, सम्यक या सम्यग दृष्टि. सम्यक दृष्टि. It is right view. It is right view. It implies right knowledge of the 4 noble truths. It can replace mithya drishti. It can replace mithya drishti, comma, a parenthesis, wrong worldview, which is egocentric, rooted in. लिख लीजिए, बाकी याद करने का प्रश्न लीजिएगा. राग, द्वेष, and मोह. It can replace mithya drishti, the wrong worldview, which is rooted in rag, dvesh, and moha. It can replace ego-centric worldview with a sense of selflessness. जी, मोह कई कॉन्टेक्स्ट में उसके मतलब बदलेंगे. क्लिंगिंगनेस भी है, इमोशनल वीकनेस भी है, और अटैचमेंट तो है ही. राग इज ऑल्सो अटैचमेंट. राग इज मोर लाइक बाइंडिंग, एडिक्शन. द्वेष इज एवर्जन. It may create that sense of repulsion. You have to avoid both the extremes. Not only you should have extreme liking, which can become addiction, you should also avoid extreme detestation. तो ना तो repulsion होना चाहिए, जैसे कि कोई हरी सब्जी खाने बोले क्या बना लेती हो मारूस, तो वो भी नहीं होना चाहिए. तो राग भी नहीं कि पिज्जा ही खाना है एकदम, और द्वेष भी नहीं. Maya शब्द word has certain references. Maya is specific to Shankar and Ramanuj. Okay. Right view enables one to understand empirical existence in its true nature, which is impermanent and unsubstantial. उसमें कोई substance नहीं है, which is not, there is nothing that is abiding. Right view is the first step towards self-transformation and removal of suffering. Now the next one is Samyak Sankalp. It is a right resolve. It instills or inculcates. It instills a sense of commitment to adhere to the Arya Satya. It implies a resolve to reform life in the light of Arya Satya. A model aspirant should renounce Rag, Dvesh, and Moh. Should have no ill feeling towards others. Ill feeling towards others. And should not injure others. Next is Samyak Vak. It is a right speech. It prescribes abstention from lying, slander, unkind words, abusive words, and meaningless talks, frivolous talks, meaningless talks, nonsense. Okay, we no nonsense. Abstention from lying, slander. Slander is also like unfair criticism, accusations, gossiping, unkind words, and frivolous talks. It implies kind and truthful speech. It implies a kind and truthful speech in a thoughtful and sensitive manner. Kind and truthful speech, in a thoughtful and sensitive manner. Samyak Karmant. It is right conduct. एग्जाम में आप सीधे लिख सकते हैं सम्यक कर्मांत, पैरेंथेसिस में लिख सकते हैं राइट कंडक्ट. तो सम्यक कर्मांत प्रिस्क्राइब्स पंचशील. इट प्रिस्क्राइब्स पंचशील, चाहे तो हाइफन पंचबुद्ध. नहीं पंचभूत है वो था जैसे चार भूत चार वाक में था. भूत ग्रॉस है, फिजिकल. ओके, जो जैना में पुद्गल है वो है पंचभूत किसी किसी ट्रेडिशन में, लेकिन उसमें भी पांचवा आकाश जैना में अलग है. तो एयर, वाटर, फायर, अर्थ, ये है चार भूत. ओके, जो चार वाक में था. पांचवा है ईथर. तो इसी पंचभूत व्हेन वी कम टू न्याय, आफ्टर बुद्धिज्म विल कम टू न्याय. पंचशील है जो आपने देखा था पंच व्रत, जो गांधी जी बोलेंगे सत्य का आग्रह, सत्याग्रह. इन मेनी केसेस धर्म, पुरुषार्थ में जो धर्म है वो भी यही है. या वी विल सी अष्टांग योग बाय हु, पतंजलि. तो अष्टांग योग में पहला योग क्या है? यम. ऐसे ही जैसे यहाँ अष्टांगिक मार्ग है वो है अष्टांग योग. यम, नियम, आसन, प्राणायाम, प्रत्याहार, धारणा, ध्यान, समाधि. तो एक्चुअली योग देखा जाए तो सिर्फ कपालभाति नहीं है सब आसन लगा के कोई लोग सो जाए बोले अरे योग कर रहे थे. तो एक्चुअली योग शुरू होता है वहां पे समाधि में ही. लेकिन यम, ऑल ऑफ दीज आर लाइक prelude, prerequisites. देखा जाए तो जैसे when you study for this exam, your actual self study is going to be like सम्यक समाधि. उससे पहले की चीजें जो हैं वो एलिमेंट्री हैं. तो एक रूटीन होना चाहिए, सेंस ऑफ सेल्फ बिलीफ, सेंस ऑफ डिसिप्लिन, सेंस ऑफ चैस्टिटी, रिजॉल्व. इतना फ्रेजाइल स्टेट ऑफ माइंड नहीं कि कोई दोस्त एक व्हाट्सएप मैसेज फेंक के बुला ले. तो व्हेन यू हैव दिस काइंड ऑफ फर्मनेस, तब जाके आप इवेंचुअली यू कैन हैव दैट इंट्रोस्पेक्शन. तो पंचशील वही है जो आपने अहिंसा, सत्य, अस्तेय, अपरिग्रह और ब्रह्मचर्य के रूप में जाना है. इसी को चाहें तो वी कैन पुट ऑलवेज आवर ड्यूटीज एज डूज एंड डोंट्स. इवन द केस ऑफ जैना यू हैड स्टडीड, अहिंसा नॉट ओनली इंप्लाइज नॉन इंजरी, दैट इज डोंट, एब्स्टिनेंस फ्रॉम इंजरी, एट द सेम टाइम डू प्रोएक्टिव लव. Not only you should abstain from lying, but you should speak truth in such a way that you spread love. So Nrit was like art of speaking truth in the case of Jaina. तो इसी तरह से आप इसको नॉन करके बोल सकते हैं या आप इसको डूज एंड डोंट्स के रूप में बोल सकते हैं. तो पंचशील हाइफन देके लिख सकते हैं, इनको लिख दीजिए. एंड इंग्लिश इक्विवेलेंट ऐसे भी लिख सकते हैं, नॉन इंजरी, नॉन वायलेंस, नॉन लाइंग, या एब्सटेंशन, प्रोहिबिशंस फ्रॉम लाइंग, नॉन स्टीलिंग, नॉन एक्विजिशन या रिफ्रेन फ्रॉम ओवर एक्युमुलेशन, नॉन एक्विजिशन या नॉन accumulation, overpossession का negation. And likewise, non-sensuality या non-indulgence in unjust bodily pleasure या non-sensuality. Okay. Right conduct do not create remorse, guilt, and sorrow. Right conduct do not create remorse, guilt, and sorrow. अगला है सम्यक आजीव. सम्यक आजीव. It is right livelihood. One should earn one's living a livelihood without harming others. One should earn livelihood without harming others. One should not resort to prohibited means which are rooted in greed and hatred. One should uphold honesty and integrity. Next is Samyak Vyayam. It is a right effort. It implies complete control over one's mind and thoughts. One needs to put in right efforts to uproot evil thoughts and to cultivate noble thoughts. We have to put in efforts to uproot evil thoughts, ignoble thoughts, and to cultivate noble thoughts. It implies self-striving and self-reliance. One can become eligible for the nirvana with self-effort, self-effort. Nirvana will not fall from the heavens. Nirvana will not fall from the heavens. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि एक दिन एक मैसेज आएगा या लेटर आएगा कि आपको ज्वाइन करना है मसूरी आज ही. You have to become worthy. Passions should be controlled and one should be watchful that old evil thoughts don't come back again. One should be watchful that old evil thoughts don't come back again, yet come back surreptitiously. चुपके चुपके वो दबे कदमों से आ जा सकते हैं. You have to be difficult लग रहा है तो one should make sure that they don't come back again. Surreptitiously वही चोरी चोरी चुपके चुपके. Surreptitiously का चेक कर लीजिएगा. अगला लिखिए सम्यक स्मृति. It is right mindfulness. It implies constant vigilance. Constant vigilance. The lessons one has learned, the lessons one has learned, one shall never forget. One should remain mindful of one's impermanence and dependent existence. In the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha suggests that one should regularly visit cemetery. One should regularly visit cemetery. Thus, through constant contemplation, one remains mindful of the perishable nature of one's own and the objects of the world. Next is Samyak Samadhi. It is a right concentration. It prescribes a life of inner reflection and contemplation. Through constant striving, one can ascend to the higher stages of concentration. There are 4 stages of samadhi. First one, the stage of, state of, the stage of vitark, reasoning, and vichar, investigation. नहीं, उसी में. The stage of vitark and vichar, reasoning and investigation. It involves intent meditation on the 4 Arya Satya. It involves intent meditation on the 4 Arya Satya. There is a joy of pure thinking. There is a joy of pure thinking. Our number 2, the stage of unruffled meditation, constant meditation, non-distracted meditation. The state of unruffled meditation. It is free from reasoning and investigation. Since all doubts are dispelled, all doubts are removed, clarified, dispelled. Since all doubts are removed at the first stage, it is free from reasoning and investigation. It is free from, the first one is reasoning and investigation. In other words, the first stage is the stage of seeking clarifications. Okay, whatever doubts, etc. we have, we seek the answers. So there is no reasoning and investigation since all doubts have been clarified at the previous stage. There is joy, peace, and inner tranquility. Inner tranquility, एक ही word है, थोड़ा gap लग रहा है. Third लिखिए. One is detached. छोटा करने के लिए आपने third लिख दिया, तो सीधे लिख दीजिए. One is detached. At this stage, one gets detached. One gets detached from oneself. There is detachment from the joy and the tranquility. However, there is perfect equanimity and bodily ease, despite being indifferent to the joys of concentration. One gets detached to oneself. One is detached from joys and tranquility. However, there is a perfect equanimity and bodily ease, despite being indifferent to the joys of concentration. A 4th number लिखिए. It is absolute detachment. There is a complete detachment from bodily ease. इसलिए मैं bodily ease का थोड़ा सा experience है. There is complete detachment from bodily ease. It is a state of perfect equanimity. Perfect लिखे थे तो absolute कर दीजिए इस बार, थोड़ा तो progression हो. It is a state of absolute equanimity, indifference, and self-possession. So detachment from oneself was what? Detachment from the sense of ego, I, पिछले वाले में. But a sense of self-possession, which is the underlying reality. Okay. One attains nirvana. Arhatship या arhathood. Primarily अभी जो हम लोग कर रहे हैं वो हीना याना के संदर्भ में. One attains nirvana. Arhathood या ship, SHIP. There is complete cessation of all suffering. There is complete cessation of all suffering. Now we'll write a few lines on the overall Astangik Marg. लिखें 10. Astangik Marg is a path to self-transformation. It prescribes a holistic engagement with life. It upholds that knowledge is a virtue, knowledge and morality are inseparable. A wise is one who is virtuous. A vicious person can never be wise. Fourth noble truth enables us to replace self-centered worldview with syncretic outlook. Self-centered exclusive worldview with syncretic worldview या inclusive syncretic worldview. तो ये हमने कुछ रिमार्क्स लिखे हैं 8 fold path में. Okay. Now you remember that there was this Pratit Samutpad. It had its genesis in second noble truth, but it can come to third noble truth also. And we have understood this is like the central tenet of Buddha's teaching. Almost everything is now a corollary of the doctrine of dependent origination, Pratit Samutpad. That is, Pratit Samutpad is suggesting what? Everything is existing as interdependent. Nothing is there forever. Hence, to be real, it need not be forever. Permanence is not the definition of real. So real is that which may have some interdependence. And hence everything that is real has causal efficacy, causal efficiency, or causal potency. So the definition of real, which is like immutable, independent existence forever, is gone. And this can be seen as what? Everything exists for some moment, chan, and then it goes, perishes. So chan, bhang, vad. This is one of the implication. This being that arises can be past, can determine present, it can determine future within a life, across cycles of life, and that is how it can also be about the law of karma. If everything is coming and disappearing, then that means there is nothing like a permanent fixed essence. So essentialism is negated, which can also be understood as, if we understand dharma is a word, contextually it can have various meaning. Dharma as attribute, defining characteristics can also be called attribute. So dharma, nairatmya. At the same time, it is a negation of substance also, negation of eternal substance also, and that is like Pudgal Nairatmya Vad. Pudgal is not only rejection of material substance, but both material and spiritual. It is also Anatmavad. So we have seen Arth, Kriya, Karitva. We have Chan Bhangvad, momentariness. We have Dharma Nairatmya, Pudgal Nairatmya, Anatmavad. So there is no substance, then what about things that is around? Everything is an aggregation of elements or entities. That will also be known as a dharma in the case of ancient Buddhist traditions. तो वो क्या है? संघात है. तो संघातवाद भी है. In some way, Pratit Samutpad is like the fountainhead, and all other teachings are corollaries of this. Okay? Now, we'll try to understand Anatmavad, and before that, we will write down Pratit Samutpad. ठीक है? तो पहली बार फिर से प्रतीत समुत्पाद पे आते हैं, जिस पे नोट्स भी लिखेंगे. Pratit Samutpad. I have broken it down so that it will be easier for you. But write it together. Pratit Samutpad. It is rooted in second and third Arya Satya or noble truths. What is the central idea? Nothing in this world is permanent, independent. Yani everything is conditioned, everything is dependent, limited. In one line, this being that arises. Okay, so there have been some kind of, say, positions, and that position can be like that real is something which is permanent. In a way, it is like eternalism, one extreme. Other extreme can be nihilism. Whatever is there is a permanent beyond change, as you have seen even in the case of Western traditions. Some of them are like nihilist. If we understand Western tradition, maybe the way Georgia is talking about, there is nothing. Okay, so whatever is in world, suddenly anything can disappear. Things can perish away, they can disappear, and there is nothing that is out there. They have come out with through Pratit Samutpad in a way, what either you call it a process or a kind of being, becoming. That is, the world is in a state of change. World is in a state of flux, constant change. And this is one of the way to understand their middle path again. And further, we can also understand it as substance ontology. So metaphysics, where you have substance as eternal, permanent ontology. And in the case of Buddhism, it is like a process ontology. Everything is in a stream of constant shift, progression. Nothing is there forever. This Pratit Samutpad is the central law, which I have already told you. And anyone who understands the Pratit Samutpad understands the law, the overall character of reality. So as Buddha would say, one who sees Pratit Samutpad sees the Dharma. And one who sees Dharma understands Pratit Samutpad. He is especially praised by Nagarjuna for teaching us Pratit Samutpad. What Nagarjuna would do using Pratit Samutpad, using Madhyama Pratipad, his silence, he will try to develop Shunyavad or Madhyamik Karika. And he will express so much angst that followers could not relate with Buddha's overall position. तो उसके बाद हम लोग जाएंगे ट्रेडिशंस में, तभी ये लिखेंगे, फिर अनात्मवाद, then we'll come to schools of Buddhism. ठीक है, तो लिखिए प्रतीत समुत्पाद. प्रतीत्य समुत्पाद, चाहे तो कोलन डिपेंडेंट ओरिजिनेशन. प्रतीत समुत्पाद is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha. It is the fundamental teaching of the Buddha. It is contained in the second and third noble truths, ya Arya Satya. It is contained in the second and third Arya Satya. Pratit Samutpad implies that everything is conditional and dependent on a cause. Nothing exists unconditionally and absolutely. Nothing exists unconditionally and absolutely. Nothing happens by chance. Nothing comes out of nothing. Yeah, only nothing comes out of nothing. It is the causal principle. Yeah, Pratit Samutpad is the causal principle, PLE. Hyphen, this being, चाहे तो कोट में भी लिख सकते हैं, this being, comma, that arises. Depending on the cause, comma, the effect arises. Depending on the cause, the effect arises. Pratit Samutpad is middle path, या मध्यमा प्रतिपद. मध्यमा प्रतिपद. Between eternalism and nihilism. Pratit Samutpad is the middle path. Madhyama Pratipad is the middle path between eternalism and nihilism. For the eternalism, reality is permanent and immutable. It is eternal and independent. Reality is permanent and immutable. It is eternal and independent. For the nihilism, reality consists of entities that perish away without leaving any trace. ये याद नहीं रहेगा तो nihilism prescribes there is nothing which can be understood meaningfully. Okay, so reality consists of entities that perish away without leaving any trace. Pratit Samutpad, हाँ वो nihilism हो गया नया लाइन. Pratit Samutpad implies becoming. It implies becoming. The objects of the world have dependent and conditional existence. Nothing is absolute and eternal. A real is one that has causal potency, a causal efficiency. A real is one that has a causal potency or efficiency. The Buddha equates pratit samutpad with the dharma, comma, the law. He equates pratit samutpad with the dharma, comma, the law. He says, one who sees का मतलब क्या होता है? जानना. That is how you also call enlightened people seers. One who sees pratit samutpad, sees the dharma. One who sees pratit samutpad sees the dharma, comma, one who sees the dharma sees pratit samutpad, unquote. He equates pratit samutpad with the dharma. One who knows pratit samutpad knows the dharma, and one who knows the dharma knows pratit samutpad. It is like a staircase or ladder. It is like a ladder or staircase whereby one can see the world with the eyes of the Buddha, capital B. It is like a staircase whereby one can see the world, the reality, with the eyes of the Buddha. And he has told us how to orient yourself towards the life. जिंदगी का नजरिया उन्होंने चेंज कर दिया. The Buddha claims that the ignorance of pratit samutpad is the root cause of all misery. Ignorance of pratit samutpad is the root cause of all misery. Pratit samutpad is the central tenet, of the Buddhism. Every other theory are implicit in it. Every other theory or theories are implicit in it. Karmavad, Chan Bhangvad, नैरात्म्यवाद या चाहे तो पुद्गल नैरात्म्यवाद, संघातवाद, अर्थ क्रियाकारित्व are its corollaries. बाकी जितने थ्योरीज हैं वो सब इसके corollaries हैं. They are derived from pratit samutpad. संघातवाद यहाँ पे है, संघात. चाहे तो एक जगह हैंडआउट ये लिख लीजिए, रेफर टू हैंडआउट पैरेंथेसिस में. इन योर हैंडआउट यू हैव थ्योरी ऑफ कर्मा, यू हैव छान भांगवाद, मोमेंटरीनेस. It implies, or pratit samutpad implies, pudgal nairatmya, comma, there is no eternal substance, hyphen, material and spiritual. The so-called substance is Sanghat. The so-called substance is Sanghat. Aggregation. Aggregation. Arth Kriya Karitva. English. Theory of causal efficiency, causal potency. Arth Kriya Karitva, parenthesis, theory of causal efficiency, completely redefines the nature of reality. Real is that which has a causal efficiency, comma, the capacity to produce an effect. Real is that which has a causal efficiency, the capacity to produce an effect. Thus, there is a series of interdependent momentary entities. प्रतीत समुत्पाद का ही एक वर्जन है. जैसे प्रतीत समुत्पाद बहुत बेसिक फॉर्म में कहती है, if you have avidya, तो you perform actions with desire, with moha, with some kind of attraction, desire, rag, dvesh. Then you earn what? Those karmic impressions. तो अगर अविद्या है तो संस्कार होगा, संस्कार है तो विज्ञान होगा. This being that arises. तो अब यहाँ भी causal efficiency है. अगर एक कैंडल फ्लेम है तो this instance of fire is caused by the previous one, and this will cause the next moment. So there is a series of interdependent entities. So whatever is before you is nothing but in a flux, things are coming and disappearing. What looks like permanent is appearance. And what is the reality? It is in a state of becoming. Change is the only constant. जैसे आप लिखा है प्रतीक समुपाद implies becoming and not being or eternalism. ठीक है, आगे लिखें. एग्रीगेशन ऑफ हर ट्रेडिशन में थोड़ा सा अंतर होगा. जो अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं ज्यादा उसको हीनायाना से समझ सकते हैं, विच इज लाइक वैभाषिक. तो थोड़ा ये कर लेते हैं, फिर टाइम बचेगा तो स्कूल पे आएंगे. तो दो तरह के those dharma particles are there, something which is like विज्ञान and then there is material thing. तो इन अ वे पुद्गल जिसमें कॉन्शियसनेस का भी इंस्टेंस है विज्ञान एंड फिजिकल अनकॉन्शियस. तो कॉन्शियस अनकॉन्शियस entities as minute particles. These minute particles are coming and disappearing in a series of interdependent existence. When they are together because of the conglomeration, you see them as one unit. So you give them a name. So actually, there is nothing like named. Name is just a name. There is no named referent. So that is how in the case of that Milind Panha, we will see that who is Nagasen, who is Milind. The way, what is a chariot? Is it the horse? Is it the wheels or the body or axle? All of them put together, you call it chariot. तो कल जब भी मैंने आपको बताया था, तो when there is a संज्ञा या नाम, रूप, then we have a संस्कार, we have विज्ञान, we have वेदना. तो इन सबका एक साथ, इन सबको क्या बोलते हैं आप? जैसे आर्यन. तो जितने नाम हैं वो उसका कोई रेफरेंट नहीं है. तो that is why it is like what? Nominalism. याद है? Universal essence is real. And one of the theory was nominalism there also. So there is nothing like a pen as a pure essence of a pen. It is just a name of the conglomeration of those dharma particles. Can you compare it with Leibniz monad? No. Leibniz के monad में monads are beyond creation, beyond destruction substances. Only miracles could destroy them. ठीक है? प्रतीत समुत्पाद is the law, शुभम. ठीक है? And dharma has a contextual meaning. अगर अभी आप उस सेंस में पूछ रहे हैं कि one who sees प्रतीत समुत्पाद sees the dharma, तो वो एक कॉन्टेक्स्ट है धर्म, law. ठीक है, जैसा कॉस्मिक को मैंने जो एक डिजाइन बनाया था वो है, जैसे ये है लॉ, तो यहाँ भी धर्म है. तो वन हु अंडरस्टैंड्स प्रतीत समुत्पाद अंडरस्टैंड्स द कैरेक्टर ऑफ द रियलिटी. उस सेंस में धर्म है. फिर धर्म है एज द रियल एंटिटी विच इज एग्जिस्टिंग फॉर क्षण. क्षण में हो जाता है वो भंग. तो क्षण भंगवाद, बट इट कीप्स ऑन क्रिएटिंग ए सीरीज. तो जो हम लोग देखेंगे उसको हम लोग हीनायाना ट्रेडिशन के थ्रू समझेंगे. आप उसको थेरावाद समझ सकते हैं, स्थाविरवाद समझ सकते हैं, या सर्व अस्तिवाद, सर्वास्तिवादिन्स. एंड देन विल कम टू वैभाषिक एंड सौत्रांतिक आल्सो. How do they explain the cause of change? Why is change happening? That law is the universal cosmic law. Pratit Samutpad is the universal law. No one has created it. In a way, it is impersonal. So they are describing time as the time नहीं उसको बोल सकते हैं. टाइम यानी मेरे आपके लिए है, ना कि उसके लिए है, द लॉ के लिए. हमको आपको समझने में टाइम लगेगा कोई चीज, लेकिन जो कैरेक्टर है रियलिटी का, इट इज लाइक दैट फॉरएवर. तो टाइम एक तरह से उस हिसाब से देख सकते हैं दैट ए पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट इज सम एट सम ड्यूरेशन सम पार्टिकल इज कमिंग एंड डिसअपीयरिंग, बट दैट पार्ट इज नॉट रियल इन सेंस दैट सीरीज इज इंपॉर्टेंट. तो आप और हम जिस पार्ट को समझ रहे हैं वहां तक रियल है क्योंकि वो कॉजली डिटरमिन्ड है एंड देन इट हैज अ कॉजल एफिशिएंसी. बट व्हाट इज एक्चुअली इन कंटिन्यूटी इज द सीरीज. So that series is something which is always there, and that series can be in some cases known as your past, present and future also. And when you attain right knowledge, so you can purify that series. तो वहां तक टाइम relevant है मेरे आपके लिए. या तभी रुकी जाइए, इस बात को हम लोग देखेंगे. कुछ लोग मानते हैं महायाना में, कुछ हद तक जो बुद्धा है वो मानते हैं कि सिद्धार्थ जो है वो इनकारनेशन है बुद्धाहुड का. तो देयर इज ए काइंड ऑफ यूनिवर्सल बुद्धा, and Siddhartha is not the first and is not the last. However, overall, if you go by the main teachings of Gautam Buddha, then it does not have any relevance. These are some of the interpretations. और जो best philosophical interpretation है, तो कुछ चीजें हो सकती हैं religious color उसमें आ जाता है. It may be emotionally appealing. So in a particular stage of our self progression, we may be motivated by some such devotional stories, and then the kind of society one may live in, वहां जब बाकी रिलीजन में उस तरह की चीजें चल रही हैं, तो we may get inspired by our other fellow religious beliefs also. But the core of Buddha's teaching has been philosophically best interpreted by Nagarjuna. तो वो हम लोग देखेंगे. लेकिन महायाना में ही वो भी है माध्यमिक. कुछ महायानिस्ट ऐसे मानते हैं और उसका कुछ का कॉन्टेक्स्ट बन सकता है योगाचारा के साथ. ठीक है, इसको ऐसे समझिए शुभम कि जो चीज हो रहा है वो प्रतीत समुत्पाद से गवर्न है. And if you start to know the true nature of things, then actually you get to know it. So overall, dharma is the law that governs reality. And when you know the reality, you know pratit samutpad. When you know pratit samutpad, you know reality. Momentariness, it's a nature of constant change, progression. And when you know it, the knowledge is not only theoretical. Knowledge is transformative. Knowledge is virtue. So wise person is one. The moment you know your nature, that you are just a part of an ongoing series, what will happen now? The sense of self-centeredness is gone, and the sense of belongingness would come to you. ठीक है, तो लिखे आगे. नागार्जुना सैल्यूट, वो एक इमोजी है सैल्यूट वाला, तो ये भेजते हैं नागार्जुना गौतम बुद्ध को। तो नागार्जुना सैल्यूट्स द बुद्ध फॉर टीचिंग प्रतीत समुत्पाद। नागार्जुना सैल्यूट्स द बुद्ध फॉर टीचिंग प्रतीत समुत्पाद। Generally, scholars divide philosophical views into substance ontology, into, चाहे तो नंबर 1 दे दीजिए, scholars divide philosophical views into number 1 substance ontology and number 2 process ontology. Substance ontology के साथ चाहे तो लिख सकते हैं philosophy of being, and process ontology is philosophy of becoming. Ontology, quote unquote, implies the study of, we have the being as such, या being qua being. Ontology means the study of being as such, comma, being qua being. That is the true mode of existence. For the substance ontology, comma, real is immutable and permanent. Change and plurality are apparent. Change and plurality are apparent. It propounds or prescribes the philosophy of being. Process ontology maintains that real is not permanent and immutable. Change is the only reality. It propounds the philosophy of becoming. Parmenides, Plato, Aristotle, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz, and Locke uphold substance ontology. However, Heraclitus, Bergson, S.A., and Whitehead, Heraclitus, Bergson, and Whitehead propound process ontology. In the Indian philosophy, almost every tradition represent substance ontology. But the Buddhism propounds the philosophy of becoming. Pratit Samutpad does not imply that, quote unquote, the world is changing. It does not imply that the world is changing. It implies that the world itself is a change. अंतर समझ में आपको कि कोई चीज है जो बदल रही है, नहीं, सिर्फ कंटिन्यूटी है. प्रोसेस इज द ओनली रियलिटी और इज द ओनली कैरेक्टर धर्म. The world itself is a change, unquote. So now we have understood Pratit Samutpad. You should later refer to Karmavad. I have told you yesterday, momentariness, and use these insights if sometime you get time to think about the essay also. You cannot enter the same river twice. One of the most important implication is Pudgal Nairatmya, and Pudgal Nairatmya, one of the most important is what? No soul theory, Anatmavad. So they reject Atma. But like Charvak again, what is being refuted is one view. That does not imply that they are rejecting altogether the reality of self. So while self, Atma, is like eternal, immutable, immortal entity, in their case, so-called Atma is again a Sanghat. In other words, if there's someone like a Shankar, then Shankar refers to a being who is over and above all the change that a body is going through. Even if you call it a Shankar in one life, and you call Vishnu in other life, you call it Rama other life, सब लोगों के हिसाब से बोल रहा हूँ, अपने यहाँ लोगों के नाम होते हैं इस तरह के, तो नाम अलग अलग है लेकिन हर बार एक ही इंडिविजुअल है। जैसे आप कपड़े बदलते हैं तो आत्मा को मन करता है नए नए शरीर लें, एंड दैट इज हाउ आत्मा इज बियॉन्ड क्रिएशन, बियॉन्ड डिस्ट्रक्शन। ना कोई मरता है ना कोई मारता है, ये मैं नहीं कहता, गीता में लिखा है। तो दिस इज हाउ आत्मा इज लाइक द परमानेंट इटर्नल सेल्फ। नाउ व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इन द बैकग्राउंड ऑफ प्रतीक समुत्पाद, देयर इज नो परमानेंट सोल। तो मेनी थिंग्स विल बी क्वेश्चनड इफ दे रिजेक्ट दिस डोमिनेंट नोशन ऑफ सेल्फ, बिकॉज दिस काइंड ऑफ सेल्फ इज देयर इन ऑलमोस्ट एवरी रिलीजन एंड इट इज देयर इन मोस्ट ऑफ द philosophical traditions. So one of the best example to understand their view is the questions of King Milind, Milind Panha. So this King Milind comes to have a dialogue with Nagasen, the sage. He wants to know from him who is in him like the person, because he has heard all of us are without any soul. So he wants to know then who is there who performs action, who will attain nirvana. Rather than answer him clearly, he asked him a counter question. How have you come? Have you walked or you have come in some vehicle? So with proud, he says, I have come in my rath, in my chariot. So he asked the next question, then what is the chariot? Of course, as I said a little while ago, chariot is nothing but an aggregation of all of this. So when you call someone Shankar, you call someone Nagasen, Milind, there is nothing like a subject. There is just aggregation, Sanghat. And hence, there is a name, but corresponding to name, there is no permanent, eternal, immutable entity as the owner, as the subject. Okay? So hence, who are we? There is something like Sangya. There is something like Roop. There is a Vigyan. There is a Sanskar. And there is Vedana. So who are we? हम लोग इनके संघात हैं। तो कोई भी चीज अपने आप में नहीं है। एक तरह से देखें तो फिर रिमेंबर दैट साइकोफिजिकल बीइंग। ओके, तो नाउ वी आर दिस aggregation of many particles. In a way, this is like one entity which is conscious, all others are unconscious, and when they come together, there is a name like now Shankar. Okay, now there is a problem according to critics now. The rival traditions say, if there is no Atma, then how will you explain transmigration? How will you explain rebirth? And they say, if you still, after rejecting Atma, if you still accept rebirth, you accept law of karma, you will be committing moral fallacies. What will be the moral fallacies? There will be a kind of vicarious liabilities. What is vicarious liability? किया किसी और ने और punishment मिल रहा है किसी और को, या इनाम मिल रहा है किसी और को। तो if you have this kind of a system, that is like unfair. कई बार हिंदी सिनेमा में या अपने यहाँ के सिनेमा में राम और श्याम, तो करेगा राम भुगतेगा श्याम। तो दैट इज हाउ एक्शन किया किसी ने, सजा मिल रहा है किसी और को, एंड दैट इज वाइकेरियस लाइबिलिटी। टेक्निकली इट विल बी लाइक व्हाट इज कर्मवाद, द एक्शंस वन हैज परफॉर्म्ड, वन इज बाउंड टू सफर और एंजॉय द फ्रूट्स। हिंदी में ये बेहतर समझ में आएगा, चाहे तो लिख भी लीजिएगा या बाद में लिखूंगा। किए हुए कर्मों का फल नष्ट नहीं होता। द एक्शंस वन हैज परफॉर्म्ड, the fruits of a performed action can never be destroyed, can never be extinguished. किए हुए कर्मों का फल नष्ट नहीं होता। अगर there is some such explanation whereby it is getting destroyed, तो in a way it is a fallacy. कृत प्रनाश, यानी जो चीजें कृत हैं उनका नाश नहीं होगा। And if you actually talk about the way Buddhism is talking about, then it is like a fallacy. Similarly, if one has performed an action and one is someone who cannot evade the responsibility, so likewise, someone who is given some fruits, maybe reward or punishment for an action one has not performed, so this is also morally wrong. तो किए हुए कर्मों का फल नष्ट नहीं होता, जो कर्म किए नहीं हैं उनका फल मिलेगा नहीं। The actions one has not performed, one shall neither be rewarded nor punished. So that is like akrita bhyagam. Krit pranash and akrita bhyagam are the fallacies.
Why is it a fallacy?
ये वही है कि अगर मॉडल लॉ है एज यू सो सो शैल यू रीप, और अगर आत्मा नहीं है तो अब someone else has performed the action in previous life and someone else is getting reward or punishment. फिर इनका एक्सप्लेनेशन भी देखेंगे। अकृता भ्यागम। Okay, so these are the accusations against Buddhism. Now, how would they explain their view? They say what we have rejected is a soul, which is eternal, immutable. That does not mean we are rejecting the identity. ये कुछ हद तक इनका पोजीशन ह्यूम से मिलता है। सेल्फ इज ए बंडल, संघात इज एग्रीगेशन, विद वन वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट डिफरेंस। इन द केस ऑफ ह्यूम, सेल्फ इज ए बंडल ऑफ डिस्क्रीट परसेप्शन. None of them are in any way connected. Incidentally, they are together. And since they are in contiguity due to the laws of association, we imagine identity. This was Hume. Kant says there should have been synthesis. In this case, there is a aggregation. But aggregation is what? This being that arises. All of them are well integrated series, and it is not unrelated, disparate, exclusive moments. All of them are well unified. So this is like forming one series. This series is performing action is getting punished. Performing action is getting reward. So there's no vicarious liabilities. There's no moral fallacies according to them. They use the analogy of candle flame, chain, and also river. What is a chain? Sometimes these days we explore new ways to make a statement. We can think about creating even a human chain. तो अगर मान लीजिए ह्यूमन चेन बनाना आप चाहें और आप खड़े हो जाएं, तो उसके बाद क्या होगा? कई लोग और आके खड़े हो जाएंगे और अगर आपका हाथ उन्होंने थाम लिया तो चेन बनता ही जा रहा है. Every time there is a person who comes, क्या बोल सकते हैं कि ये चेन अलग हो गया? तो this as a chain, even if say imagine that we form across a country or maybe कुछ लोग जहाज पे भी हैं, globally we form this chain. तो chain is one. As a chain there is a continuity. So likewise, one life, other life, but as a series it is one. Or some people like to wear chain in their neck. कुछ क्रिकेटर मोटे मोटे चेन पहन लेते हैं. तो मान लीजिए कि उन्होंने चेन बना लिया और थोड़ा ज्यादा दिखावे में बड़ा बना लिया, कोई नीचे लटक जा रहा है तो बैट फंस जाता है जब खेलने लगते हैं तो जाते हैं दोबारा सुनार के पास, बोलते हैं थोड़ा छोटा करता हूँ. तो इवन व्हेन फ्यू पार्ट्स आर टेकन अवे और बोलते हैं चलिए निकल के अच्छा तो हाथ में दे दो इसका, इसी में से निकाल के हाथ में भी लिया उन्होंने. तो अगर इफ और शुरू में इतना टाइट कर दिया कि गर्दन ही दब जाए तो बोलते हैं थोड़ा जोड़ दो इसमें. तो इफ दे ऐड फ्यू मोर कंपोनेंट स्टिल चेन रिमेन्स द सेम चेन. That is how there is a continuity. Same river may go through different countries and you call it the same river. In many cases, the names will be different. If a candle flame, if stick is long enough to sustain for several hours or say a few days, some people may go put a candle, let's say to in a kind of commemoration tribute to brave hearts. तो हो सकता है वो इतना candle thick हो, मोटा हो, 2-4 दिन हफ्ते चले मान लीजिए. तो from day 1 till say day 10, flame is there. But every moment what is happening? And you call it the same flame. It is not different. So hence, he as in the Buddhists argue that you are not able to understand what we say. There's no moral liabilities. We are not undermining responsibility. There's no vicarious liabilities. The same series who is performing the action, who is reaping the fruits as well. So this is one of the answers. As you have seen earlier also many times, the Vedanta responds to you. Shankar responds to Buddhists, also to Charvak. The one who negates Atma is Atma. His point is the knower has to be over and above the chains, who is unifying, synthesizing everything. But in this case, there is nothing that is changing. As you have written, change itself is real. तो अब हम लोग इसको लिखेंगे. And again, if say you have to think about this view, why? So primarily, Buddha is like a physician, not a metaphysician. वो दिमाग का इलाज करने आए हैं और बीमारी देने नहीं. Overall, Indian tradition is prescribing a way of life. And in their respective ways, they talk about selflessness. So we have two extremes. Yourself is not your isolated. Yourself is as Atma. It is the Atma of entire world. Vishwatma. Your Atma is such that Atma is the ultimate reality. Brahman. Atman is Brahman. Brahman is Atman. When you know yourself, you know you are one with everything. तो जब अब हर चीज के अंदर वही आत्मा है तो फिर से आप सेल्फिशनेस से सेल्फलेसनेस की तरफ चले गए. Another possibility is explored by Buddha. When you have to inculcate selflessness, how can you develop selflessness if there is a self? So let's have no self. So when no self theory is ingrained, we can come out of I, me, myself. And then we can cultivate universal Maitri fraternity. And this is why probably it seems all other positions are a corollaries of the fundamental view, which is like Pratik Samutpad indeed. तो अब हम लोग लिखेंगे अनात्मवाद. नहीं प्रीवियस. अब फिर से देखिए, एक तो है लिटरल मीनिंग. तो लिटरल मीनिंग में इस लाइफ में जो सफर कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज समटाइम व्हाट हैपेंस, वी मे डेवलप ए सेंस ऑफ डिस्टर्बेंस. We all say at some point of time, not because if I'm claiming तो मैं कोई स्पेशल हूँ, मैं तो बुद्ध के बिहाफ पे शेयर कर रहा हूँ, but we all often get disturbed and then we ask the same question, why me? हर किसी के मन में एक ही शिकायत है कि मैं जितना करता हूँ उससे मुझे कम मिलता है और बगल वाला काम करके ज्यादा ले रहा है फायदा. तो why don't I get what others are getting? Either we are unfair in our own assessment, we only take into consideration what life have not given us. But if we count our blessings, एक सेंस ऑफ ग्रेटिट्यूड आ जाएगा उसी समय. तो हो सकता है कुछ चीजें यहाँ नहीं मिलता है तो कहीं और कंपेंसेट होता है, तो नेट बैलेंस बना होता है. बट स्टिल इफ देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ दैट अनरेस्ट, वी नीड ए क्लोजर. कि कोई बड़े बुजुर्गों के पास जाएगा कि वाई ऐसा क्यों होता है, दैट आई नो वो क्रिमिनल है और उसके साथ कुछ नहीं हो रहा है और अच्छे लोग कई बार जेल में भी हैं, कुछ लोग मार्टर हो जाते हैं. तो शायद दिन दिस नैरेटिव में गिव अस ए सेंस ऑफ क्लोजर. मे बी इन पास्ट लाइफ द सेंट ऑफ दिस लाइफ was not performing as good actions as the devil of this life could have. तो किसी के शायद जो पिछले कर्मों के, पिछले लाइफ के जो कुकर्म हैं वो शायद इस बार हम लोगों के बैड लग हैं, और किसी ने जो इस लाइफ में कुकर्म कर रहा है, still one is getting away. Maybe one has done it good in past life. But then we should not take it always literally. कि past का मतलब वही है और future का मतलब है life hereafter और next life. देखा तो लाइफ बहुत छोटी भी है, but sometimes it may become long also. And if we analyze our own journey so far, in many cases you see the journey progression of many people. Many of them have not get the so-called success rewards in their early life or even in late life, or लेकिन आगे पीछे as if there is something like a poetic justice. जिन लोगों ने बुरा किया है, हो सकता है आपको लग रहा है कि वो बड़े आराम से रह रहा है, क्या पता, देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ गिल्ट ड्यू टू दैट वन इज नॉट एबल टू स्लीप प्रॉपरली। तो हु आर वी टू नो कि कौन कितना खुश है? देयर आर पीपल हु वी मे एनवी, suddenly we get to know that one was so fed up with life that one may commit suicide। कौन नहीं बनना चाहेगा सुशांत सिंह राजपूत? और वो खुश नहीं है सुशांत सिंह राजपूत होके। इसका मतलब है कि वो हर इंसान जो हमको आपको खुश लग रहा है, जरूरी नहीं कि खुश है। लाइफ में गिव अस सम रिवॉर्ड एंड सम सफरिंग एंड वी ऑल हैव टू शेयर इट कलेक्टिवली एंड डू नॉट बी सो सुपरफिशियल इन एनालाइजिंग योर ओन privileges, under privileges, deprivations, and you never know what other is going through। तो शायद लॉ ऑफ कर्मा इज वेरी मच अबाउट द लाइफ वी आर इनटू नाउ। कुछ हद तक पास्ट मेरे आपके आने से पहले इस दुनिया में what our ancestors have done, we have to suffer the consequences। If a group of Europeans had come and ravaged our country brutally, we are going to suffer because of that। तो this is how हर किसी का जो एक पास्ट है वो हमको आपको भी हॉन्ट करता रहेगा and we cannot escape it। ठीक है, तो अब हेडिंग बनाइए अनात्मवाद कोलन द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ नो सोल या नो सोल थ्योरी। ठीक से शुभम ने समझा नहीं आप क्या पूछ रहे हैं? इतनी आत्मा कहां से आ रही है? अच्छा भी लिख लीजिए, क्या पता आंसर मिल जाए। तो आत्मा कहां से आ रही है? कुछ क्वेश्चंस जो हैं वो अनआंसर्ड हैं, तो इसीलिए बुद्धा ने भी साइलेंस ही ऑब्जर्व किया था। तो हम लोगों को सारे जवाब, वो क्या है कि हर सवाल का जवाब नहीं मिल सकता, कुछ सवाल सवाल ही रहने दीजिए और टाइम खराब होता है बुद्ध के हिसाब से उन सवालों में जाने से। तो अनात्मवाद डेफिनेशन चेंज कर दिया।
जो वर्ल्डली कॉज है, जो चेंजमेंट इसका जो कॉज है वो नहीं बताया, तो कई सारे क्लॉज
नहीं, जो काम की चीजें उन्होंने बता दी, वो बोल रहे हैं कि अगर आपने ये समझ लिया इस ट्रुथ को, तो ऑटोमेटिकली योर आउटलुक वुड चेंज। तो ही इज, जो लाइन आपने लिखा है, ऑल दैट ही इज डूइंग इज रिप्लेसिंग मिथ्या दृष्टि विद सम्यक दृष्टि। तो सबसे पहले जो ये सेंस है, आई मी माई सेल्फ, at the drop of a hat we get hurt। कुछ चीजों में हर्ट होना भी चाहिए and that can inspire you, but sometimes we get so depressed, dejected that we find it difficult to fight back, struggle। तो उसी कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ये जो सेंस ऑफ आई है, वेयर आवर ईगो इज इन्फ्लेटेड, उसको डिफ्लेट करना है। अनात्मवाद वो पिन है, अगर उसको लेके समझने लगेंगे, फट से वो बैलून फट जाएगा एंड नाउ धरातल पे आ जाएंगे। तो विल रियलाइज कि खामखा में इतना ज्यादा प्रेशर लेके चल रहा था, मैं हूं कौन? तो जो भगवत गीता ने कहा है उसी को भी बुद्ध अपने तरीके से बोल रहे हैं। इन सम वे यू गेट टू नो दैट यू आर नो वन, व्हाई यू हैव सो मच प्रेशर ऑन यू, you just have to be there and the little you can do is to change your outlook and now participate all over again। तो लिखिए, अनात्मवाद is a corollary of pratit samutpad। Most of the philosophical traditions and religion accept the reality of self as a simple, eternal, want to deny it। You may say that I think that I will be able to remove child beggars from this life of exploitation, or I will be able to get quality education for them। आवाज आ रही है आप लोगों को? तो शुरू से ही लिखते हैं अनात्मवाद, the doctrine of no soul theory। आत्मवाद, अनात्मवाद इज ए कॉरोलरी ऑफ प्रतीक समुत्पाद। फिर से आइडिया पे जाना है, यानी जब आप हैंड आउट अपना बनाए, टेबल बनाए, तो यू वुड से अनात्मवाद is a corollary of pratit samutpad। It is derived from there, so it is a corollary of pratit samutpad। Most of the philosophical traditions and the religions of the world accept the reality of self as a simple, eternal, and immortal substance। In the Jaina, self oblique soul is जीव। ये सभी आपके तरह से एनरिचमेंट के लिए एक लाइन लिख लेते हैं। तो इन द केस ऑफ जैना, सोल इज जीव। In Sankhya, it is Purush। In many others, it is Atman। In Jaina, it is a Jeev। In Sankhya, it is Purush। In many other traditions, it is the Atman। For the Buddha, there is no self oblique soul as a permanent and eternal spiritual substance, comma, over and above sensations and impressions। Anatmavad comes close to Hume's notion of self as a bundle of perceptions। However, there is a significant difference। For Hume, there is no necessary causal relation between the perceptions. But in the case of Anatmavad, there is a causal interdependence, comma, this being that arises, parenthesis, Pratik Samutvad. For the Buddhism, the self is a mere name. The self is a mere name. There is no absolute subject. In Questions of Milind, in Questions of Milind, in the Questions of Milind with capital initials unquote, Nagsen clarifies to the king Milind. Nagsen clarifies to the king Milind that Nagsen is only a name. There is no permanent subject, comma, an eternal soul, yourself. In response to Milind's questions, in response to Milind's question, comma, if there is no soul, ये चाहे तो कोलन डाल दें. In response to Milind's questions, कर दीजिए कोलन. If there is no soul or self, then who performs action? If there is no soul or self, then who performs actions? Who attains nirvana? Nagsen answers him with the parable, simile, and analogy. He answers him with the parable of a chariot. Chariot is also one common metaphor, not only in our traditions but also in West. A chariot cannot be equated with its constituents, hyphen, namely pole, wheels. It cannot be equated with its constituents, yeah, components like pole, wheels, horses, or the body. The chariot is nothing over and above these constituents. Chariot, in quote, is a mere name for the aggregation of the components. Chariot is a mere name, a word, for the aggregation, a conglomeration of these components. Similarly, self is simply a name. जहां पे आपने conglomeration या aggregation लिखा था, वहां पे चाहे तो आप संघात लिख सकते हैं. In the reverse direction, the reverse direction. That is how then it is not. Similarly, even if horses are removed, so there is a kind of, basically what this suggests, all of them as parts have one thing, and when they are put to a particular order, there is something like synthesis, a new thing. Now, parts may change. This can answer that paradox of a ship of Theseus. You can take away part, and the horse, let's say that it is the same chariot. If you remove the horse, if one is tired, so even then it is the same chariot. If wheel is broken, you get it fixed, it is the same chariot. But if you put it in a different way, then it is no longer a chariot. It is something else. Okay. आप लिखिए क्या लिखा आपने? Similarly, soul or self is simply a name for the five skandha. Five skandha. It is not over and above the aggregate. Aggregate के लिए क्या लिख सकते हैं? संघात. The five components are: number one, रूप, four material elements. रूप, which is four material elements. Second is vigyan, consciousness. Vedana, next is Vedana, feelings. Sangya, Sangya, colon, to understand and name things. Sanskar, memories and impressions of a past experience. Hence, a self is nothing apart from a matrix of these 5 components. Self is nothing apart from a matrix of these components. There is no one who is over and above these components. Hence, Anatmavad is not an absolute negation of the self, but hence, Anatmavad is not an absolute negation of the self, but a critique of the prevalent conception, critique क्या होगा QUE, but a critique of the prevalent conception of self. In accordance with Pratit Samutpad, self is reviewed and redefined in a manner that can cultivate selflessness. Hence, while an eternal and immortal spiritual substance is negated, Anatmavad equates self with a continuous series of interdependent components. The Buddhism negates the reality of material substance as well, the reality of a permanent material substance as well. An orange is nothing but an aggregation or collection. Aggregation is a difficult शब्द लग रहा है तो, but a collection of certain color. An orange is nothing but an aggregation, collection of certain color या orange color, certain taste या sweet taste, आजकल तो खट्टे भी आते हैं, sour taste, and a certain fragrance. Thus, substantiality is a fiction. It is a construct. Substantiality, समझ में आ रहा है? Is a fiction. It is a construct. अब एक हेडिंग बनाइए, critical evaluation. The critics, अभी critics पता है ना क्या स्पेलिंग होगा? The critics argue, the critics argue that Anatmavad will fail to explain rebirth, transmigration, and will, yes, the rebirth and transmigration, and will introduce vicarious liabilities. Yeah, it will undermine moral responsibilities. They accuse the Buddhists of promoting moral fallacies, namely, आपने लिखा था क्या कृत प्रनाश? इससे तो लिखी लें दोबारा, मिल गया. They accuse the Buddhists of committing or promoting moral fallacies, hyphen, कृत प्रनाश and अकृता भ्यागम. कभी कभी भ्यापगम भी होता है. अकृता भ्यागम, ऐसे it is in your handout also. That is, if there is no eternal self, then the fruits of an action would not be reaped by the agent. The fruits would vanish away without being reaped. again, yeah, moreover, again, the one who would reap the fruits, the one who would reap the fruits has never performed the action. The one who would reap the fruits has never performed the action. समझ में आई बात? तो ये है Charles. We will see the response tomorrow. Okay. All right. So thank you for your participation. Now you can go through the pages on Schools of Buddhism quickly as well. Okay. So we'll meet tomorrow again at 5:30 p.m. Until then, take care.